Hello. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone can hear us just fine. If everyone can hear us just fine, could you notice us in the chat box if everyone can hear us? Because we are trying something new at the moment. And you are joining us today for the second episode of the Demystifying Post-Productions webinar. And today we are trying something new, as I already mentioned before, and we are so lucky because we are joined by our friends at Canon USA, and we are live from Canon Burbank studio. So let me introduce you to our amazing guest today. And today we have Genaro Xavier Arroyo. He is a senior professional market specialist at Canon USA. And Genaro has provided very much like technical consultancies for major news agencies, sports teams, and photographers, as well as conducting market research ranging from photography to cinema and to social influencers as well. And also, along with Genaro, joining us today is David Doko. David is a technical specialist for professional market at Canon USA. And David is playing a really important part in the development of Canon 4K professional HDR reference display, as well as the HDR workflow, and also the development of Cinema EOS product. So we are really blessed, and we can ask a lot today. If you are into technical stuff, you are into a treat today. So yeah, thank you very much, David and Genaro, for your time to join us in our webinar. And also the usual suspect today, Diego Llama. Diego is the founder and colorist at Estudio Rocco, based in Colombia. And Diego just recently published an amazing resource on ACES color management on behalf of Netflix. So if you go to YouTube and search for ACES setup in DaVinci Resolve, you will stumble upon Diego series on ACES. And also joining us, Anthony Barry. Tony is a filmmaker, editor, and also finisher and post-productions consultant based in Los Angeles. And you can check out Tony's latest project on YouTube YouTube original series on refugee athletes. And I think in this project, Tony was the finishing editor on that.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And yeah, my name is Max, and I am the resident colorist and trainer here at Maxon. So if you join us last week, you probably already know where to see the recording of this video. But if you missed the webinar, you can go to YouTube channel, to our YouTube channel, Maxon Training Team, and you can rewatch the webinar. And also all the future webinars will be recorded here, will be uploaded here as well. And yeah, on last sessions, we have been discussing about the process of look creations, starting at the pre-production phase. And Diego has kindly provided us with a very nice flow chart for us to get an overview of the process. You can still download the flow chart from the downloadable link as well. So we are continuing the theme, and we will pick up from the last time where we left in the LUT creations process, and we will go deep on that today. But before we jump into the discussions, let me point you out into the certifications page in Maxon's. So if you would like to test your knowledge in any Maxon product, and you can do that by going to maxon.net/certifications. And yeah, for example, if you are using Magic Bullet Suite and you want to test your knowledge or refresh your knowledge, you can simply go to this page, and there is like 50 questions that you need to answer, and 85% of correct answer needed to pass the exam. And then don't forget, you can also get the t-shirt by using the code provided in the hands out sections. Bear in mind that using the code, you can only order for 1 t-shirt. And for further events, you can go to maxon.net/events to check out the further events. So without further ado, let me hand over the microphone to Diego to explain about the LUT creations process to pick up from where we left last week. Diego, please.
Okay, hey everyone, how's it going? So it's Monday here and it's raining, but it's always a good day to start. So yeah, last week we were talking about LUT creation and we were especially talking about, the problems and the risk, but also the advantage to think of a look at the beginning and how to create it, and especially what are the main discussions and the references that we need to take before I start doing that. So here I'm in Resolve, and actually Tony sent me a couple of images that you guys are going to see later in live. And as last week, what I did before was talking with Tony, and we say, okay, I asked him, what do you want? Do you want something warm? Do you want something cool or something like that? So after talking with him, he said, let's make an experiment. He said, let's start doing things. So what I did was start I entered to Shot Deck. That is, I don't know if you say the same, Max, but it's I love this web page. I love this web page. It's like I'm spending a lot of time looking and saving images. So he said to me, okay, let's make something warm, let's make something cool, let's make something green. And definitely I got some references. The references, I have them here. So here I saved some reference for blue. Here I saved some reference for green, and also some warm references. And this is really interesting because what I like is to start thinking of what he wanted, and because we are going to do an experiment, so why not to start looking at some references. So he sent me these shots, and the first thing that I asked him was, okay, what was the name of the camera? So here I have a C70, C300, and here I have a C70. So this is for me really, really important to know before creating a LUT, because one of the main problems, probably David will also talk more about it, is that when we create LUT, we definitely can break the engineering of the cameras and produce some weird artifacts. So the more we know about the camera they are going to use on the shooting, the more we can have, or the more we can create an accurate LUT that will not have many of the digital artifacts problem. So based on that, the first thing that I did was I create let me just actually go here. I create a color space transform that I was going from the Canon Cinema gamut. I asked also Tony what was the gamma that he was, or that they wanted to record. And then I go to Rec 709. That was my first step. I could do that based, a normal D-log based leaf gamma gain, but I will definitely, in most of my cases, what I'm doing is that I prefer to make this in a technical way than in a artistic way. So after that, what I did was I create a couple of settings. Let me just share it with you here. So for example, here, one of the ideas was, okay, let's make one that is warm. So what I did was I create OpenFX. I changed the temperature, the original temperature. And one of the good things that I like about this OpenFX, the chromatic adaptation, is that when I save this LUT, let me share it to you. This one. When I put this LUT in a, what is my screen? Do you see my screen, guys?
Yes, I can still see your screen.
Okay, perfect. Yes. So what I did was okay, first I put the temperature, and then I apply it to the image, and then I apply it to the gradient. So what I look in here is I look at in some way at the behavior of what is happening. And one of the things that I like about color adaptation is that it does not move my black point. And that is in most of the case that I like about it. So based on that, then after creating a chromatic adaptation that will give a tonal adjustment to the general look, I start like to fixing some things based on what I wanted or what we wanted in some way. So for example, in this case, what I saw is that the chromatic adaptation was giving me something really green. So I was fixing it here with some like applying some primary bars, especially like to don't make something really warm. And then I was playing a little bit with some hue and shade curves, maybe to make a little bit the green more, the red more green, and also playing with some hue shade. Okay, not in this case, but in some other. And I was also like testing all of that here in my grayscale, but also what I was like doing some versions, moving the opacity of the temp, because what I know or what I have expected doing these LUT lags is that in some of the cases they are really destructive on set when we wanted to print the final look of the image. So I usually love like to put here, if this is the look, sometimes I start making like tests here and I send to the people on camera, okay, this is the LUT with 50% of color, this is the LUT with 20%, and together we start like searching for the right point. Also in this camera test, it's really important for us like to have this color chart, because with this color chart, what we see is how this LUT is applying or how this LUT is affecting the different colors of the nature. So for example, in this case, we see many colors, but one of the most important ones is the middle gray, because the middle gray is in some ways reflects a kind of the skins. So for example, with this look, the skins will be a little bit more green, but I mean, we can start like talking about it and we can send in one look back and one other. And in this case, it's also important to ask what LUT or what type of LUT is accepting the camera. So is it a LUT for 70 points? Is it a LUT for 33 or 65? What is the extension, cube? Or I know there are, one of the problems of the LUT is that there are a lot of extensions. So it's also really important. So as a key or as a tip, just to close this part, it's really important to know where or what is the camera that they are going to use, the color space and the gamut, the color space and the gamut and the gamma that they are going to use for recording, and to think that, okay, we are sending something, but it's not the final step. The great thing about this camera test is, okay, you give me something, then I give you something, and we both start creating as a conversation what we wanted. And definitely, this is not going to be the final look. This is just going to be a tonal adjustment that is going to reflect what we want at the end. I don't know if you have any questions, Max.
So far, so good, Diego.
I would say it's a good starting point. I would call it a good starting point.
Yes,
something so you don't show your client a washed out image on the client monitor.
Yeah, and in most of the cases, this look is going to be the intention of this look is going to be the end, the final intention. So that is the best thing. And this is also the reason that why 4 years ago or 3 years ago, all of the people wanted flat images, because they were looking at flash images in editing like for about 2 months or more. So I remember that when we were grading these flat images, they were saying to us, no, don't make anything. We want something like this flat. So it was kind of boring for that.
Yeah, we saw that also in our industry. Obviously, once we started putting Canon LOG on DSLRs, we saw a lot of indie filmmakers or documentaries just using the flat look. That was their final product. It's like, no, that's not really the goal, but okay, sure.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
so as you see here, I have some looks.
Renato, what is the difference when you are using a like flat profile and using a log file, shooting log file and shooting flat profile. Is there any massive difference?
The main difference is going to be, and Diego's probably going to maybe agree with this one also, is you just have more information on the back end to work with. With flat, there's less contrast, no sharpness being applied. Technically, you're keeping more detailed information in your video and your stills.
I see.
But with actual log, you're actually now gaining that extra gamut of information. I mean,
The
retaining
dynamic range is not baked into
the
the
dynamic
picture.
range is there. You're not losing it.
I see.
Yeah, so flat is not Canon log. Flat
Yeah.
is, or neutral, like if you have the older cameras, it's maybe the
Yes.
closest you can try and get there, but it's not log.
It's not calibrated to the colors that the sensor is
It's
meant
not,
to put out.
not an ACES workflow there.
Yeah, it's not mirroring what the actual image is supposed to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Thank you very much for showing that, Diego. I, on the other hand, would like to show the process of creating the LUT when you are not using Resolve. So, for example, when you are working mainly in Premiere Pro, there is still a way to do that, and especially if you are using Magic Bullet Suite, there are several ways that you can do. Well, you can use Colorista to create LUT because there's a possibility with the latest release. And also, if you're not preferring LUT workflow, there is also a similar workflow that is using presets, and you can use any other tools, not just Colorista, to do that. So, for example, here in my screen, you can see the Premiere Pro running, right?
Yes.
Yeah, here is the file that I got from Tony, and this is the footage from C300. And as Diego already pointed out, that we have chip chart, the color chart here, it's really helping my life as a colorist. It's really helping me a lot to either balance the shot or creating a look for the shot. So for example, here in Colorista, what I did is just, well, let me just disable this and just create another instance of Colorista. So what I did is that I'm just playing around with the contrast, or I can do the guided color corrections like usual and just follow that, and just to normalize the image first. Adjust the saturations, and then for the temperature and tint, I will just pick the middle gray, and there you go, I'm finished already. And for the looks that I want to create on that, so for example, if I want to remap the red into orange, I can just use the HSL wheel and drag it closer to orange, and use the yellow closer to orange, and then I can also play with the luminance of the color, and I can also remap green closer to cyan, or also the blue closer to cyan. And I pretty much can get my look by just doing that. And also I can also introduce cooler tone in the shadow, and a little bit of warmer tone in the midtones. And to create LUT in Colorista, you can easily create a LUT by pressing the Generate LUT, and then you will have a window, and you can just create, you name the LUT, and specify the folder. In this case, I have the custom folder, and click Generate. Well, I already done that previous the steps before, and to search for the LUT that I've created, you can just select choose a LUT and locate your LUT. And for example, here, the LUT that I've created before, the LUT to remap the red hue into more into orange-ish. So I then can locate this folder, locate the file, show in Explorer, and I can just like copy and paste, send it to Tony, and there you go. That was it.
You just mentioned
another,
Max, you hear me?
yes.
Yeah, just mention also it's the same thing on the Mac side. So if
It
you're
is
talking
also,
about
yes.
Explorer on the Windows side, reveal in Explorer, then reveal in Finder for Mac, and the folder structure is the same, and the files.
So for example, yeah. So for example, if I want to apply the same LUT in this second clip, I can just like go to the LUT. Oh, sorry, that's a preset. No, I'm sorry. Choose a LUT. And locate it and apply it, and I got pretty much the look that I'm going for. And apart from that, you can also use Magic Bullet looks, but in Magic Bullet looks, you cannot create LUT, but instead you'll create a preset. And in the Magic Bullet release, new release, there's a particular nice tool that's called the Color Remap, where you can just use the tool to work with color checker, and there is even a preset to do that. It's called the color checker inside Color Remap, and what you do here is just basically choosing the original color, the source color, and just go on to that one by one. And as I already save here, I have, for example, well, that's a film look. I'm sorry, let me just repeat it again. It's a little bit tedious process because you have to go in like one by one. But bear with me, we will normalize the clip just by doing this and remap the hue, every single hue. So I hope I don't bore you guys.
Don't
You
worry.
know, Max, let me I'll add one thing to that, Max.
And
Like you're doing the color remap, but at the same time, you can use other tools and literally just carve it out with curves or using other adjustments. And the whole point is that you can export it. You're just one more step. That's all.
Yes, and as Diego said, you can use all this, the chip and the neutral color to balance the color balance in your clip. And there you go. I got pretty much done, and I can save it as a preset, and I also can forward it to another person in line.
That's the one you would be sending to us.
Yeah, and also another nice trick that you can use with the color remap is that, for example, if I have like some shot that's shot in film, and I want to get the DNA of that look, for example, what you can do here, you can just use the same preset, but instead of using the source color, you can just pick the result color, and you just repeat the process like what I did before. And as I already mentioned, I already have a look saved as a preset. So for example, if I'm going back to another clip, and if I'm choosing the presets that using the same film look before, I will pretty much get the same look, but just the different contrast, of course. And you can play around with the contrast with different tools such as Colorista and so on. But that is from the my perspective as somebody that is not very adept with the technical how do you call it, background. But here, since we have David, the color scientist at Canon, probably we can ask David. David, what is the thing that we really need to watch out when we are creating LUT? When we are creating LUT in the post productions.
You both have, Diego and Max, you both have made really good points about understanding what the camera is actually acquiring in terms of the codec, the log curve, the color space, and it's really important that we understand what the camera is using for its codec and its log curve. And I wish that I could show you the menus from the camera, but due to the limitations of the GoToMeeting, I can't actually show you the actual menu structure and the on-screen display. But first of all, I think before we started the webinar, we did have a discussion between you and I, Max, as to what base color space the LUTs were created with, and you informed me that it was actually Rec 709, and so that's something to know. And when you are actually in Resolve, and perhaps they could demonstrate this for you, you could just demonstrate it for the audience that that if you acquire your material in Canon Log 2 or Canon Log 3, you actually have to do a transform to Rec 709 and to a gamma curve before you actually apply these LUTs that have been created with the Red Giant Magic Bullet software. So what I could do is just kind of show you, if Tony, if you want to just flip it over to the C70, what we're getting from that at this moment is actually a very logish look. And what we meant when we started this discussion, we were talking about how people were, looking at material on set that looked very flat. And one of the reasons that does look very flat is that its dynamic range has been limited in order to to actually protect the highlights and the shadow areas, so that later on you can actually expand that fully to a more contrasty image. And also another reason is that the colors are very desaturated in order to actually protect the limits of your image, because often when you start off in Rec 709 and you are not shooting log, colors can actually be oversaturated, and that can be a problem in post-production. So really, log is meant to compress both tonally and in terms of the color volume that image that you're going to be later, adjusting in post-production, and it will give you the maximum flexibility in order to achieve, your vision, your desired look. However, it's something that you have to be aware of in terms of using LUTs on set. You can't, when you want to try to achieve your vision, you should be looking at what you want the image to look like on set, obviously. Because if you're just looking at a log image, you're not looking at a normalized image. You're looking at a signal that's actually meant for, later manipulation. So what Max has actually created is a LUT for you to use on set, in order so that you can have, an idea of where you want that image to end up. However, like we were just mentioning, you have to realize what you're actually working with. And so what I'm going to do is, right now I'm going to just flip the C70. The C70 is actually capable of, shooting in Canon log. Yeah, in Canon log and in Canon log 2 and Canon log 3. They're just different versions of log to give you a different dynamic range and starting point. Canon log 2 gives you the greatest dynamic range, and exceeding 15 stops, and Canon log 3 gives you about 13 stops of dynamic range. The Canon log 3 gives you basically gives you a head start, especially in the shadow area, where you don't have to color grade as much in order to achieve a more contrast to your blacks.
So would you say it has like a lower ceiling?
It has a lower floor, actually. It has a higher floor in order to actually kind of, it doesn't crush the blacks, but it gives you blacks that are much more familiar to a lot of users who are more familiar with CLOG 2, our original CLOG. And so CLOG 3 was developed after CLOG 2 in order for you to give you punchier blacks.
So you can expose with contrast in mind.
Right. So you can actually, so in post-production, what you're looking at is a more contrasty image to start out with, which helps a lot of people when they're not used to color grading for a very wide dynamic range in shadows, where they really do have to do more manipulation to actually achieve greater contrast, easier blacks, or blacks that are closer to the floor. So here, I'm going to just change this over, the C70 to Rec 709, and you'll see even there in your screens through the webinar a more normalized image. You do realize that most people should realize that what you're looking at on your screens on your computers is sRGB, which as a color space is very similar to Rec 709. And here you're seeing, so right now I've switched over to Rec 709, and I've actually have Max's LUTs available on an SD card in the C70. And so
wow,
my demonstration of flipping over from Canon log 2 to Rec 709 is so that you understand, if I start out with Canon log 2 and load Max's LUTs, or any one of his LUTs, it's actually an incorrect way to view the image, because he created the LUTs in Rec 709 as a starting point. So you have to really not only understand what the camera is capable of, but you have to understand what your colorist has done in conjunction with you. There has to be a dialogue before you start shooting so that you both understand what that base point is. So now that I've changed the camera over to Rec 709, actually I can go in and load one of his LUTs, and
one is Max's, and I think a couple are Diego's too.
Okay, so I just did that. Right now I just flipped over to a LUT that he created called Blue, and this is he can tell you more about the technicalities of this LUT, but it was just blue.cube, which was available that he sent to us. It looks
kind of crazy.
No, it's definitely super saturated, heavy
looks
contrast.
crushed.
So let me try and
Totally
sent to us. Yeah.
David, if I may interrupt you, there are several questions in the chat. The first questions coming from Joey: will the R5 shoot CLOG 3?
That's a question for Hanaro.
That's a question for Hanaro.
So on the Canon log upgrades, we just did an announcement on some firmware release update on the R6 and the 1DX Mark III. I can't say anything about the R5 on getting the Canon log 3. I don't even have the full information. I was surprised about 2 nights ago also, like Friday night. But on the R6 and the 1DX Mark III, we added more Canon log option. On the R5, no further information. What we have right now is what we have right now.
On Canon log 2 and log 3 note, would you recommend one more than another between Canon log 2 or 3 for daytime highlight or nighttime or low light?
I think we'll both have different answers for that one on what we all recommend. On my side, dealing with hybrid content creators, photographers, videographers, cinematographers that have to shoot media at the same time, so DSLRs, I tell them, how much time do you have in post? Are you your own colorist? Are you hiring a professional colorist? I stress this with young filmmakers that it took you a month to edit, it's probably take you another month to color correct it, if it's you. Unless you get a professional that can just fly, like Diego. So if you're doing Canon log 2, technically that's the most you can capture. If the question is, I want the most of my sensor, highest roof, lowest floor, 2. With that though, you're spending more time to give it the look that you want, probably in post. If you're like, I gotta deliver this thing in 3 days, you might just want to use log only, original log, where it's not that flat, and you can just bring it to 709, do a little love to it, and then you're happy from there.
That's great. Yeah. I think these questions will go for David. David, could you please explain to us what is the difference actually shooting log and shooting raw? If media storage space wasn't an issue, would shooting log have any advantage to shooting raw?
It does have an advantage. One, just purely the data rate will give you more bit depth. So the codec that is shot with in video, which is XFAVC, which is not RAW, is a 10-bit codec, and the RAW is a 12-bit codec. And when I color grade, that difference actually is significant. And when I start to stretch out problematic areas, especially like say you're trying to recover a little bit more shadow detail and gradations in the shadow or the highlights, that bit depth really makes a big difference in what you can actually extract and how aggressive you can be in your color grade. You can even see it on the waveform. At some point, one of our webinars I could demonstrate it. So that's a key difference. The data rate is enormously different too. So it's really nice to have a compressed codec because you're able to fit a lot onto the available media. However, if you do have plenty of budget and plenty of CF Express cards, having 1 gigabit per minute, or I believe I can't remember the exact data rate, is just having all that extra data. You'll see it in the pixels. You'll see really fine details that you can recover and see. that you may lose in the more compressed codecs. It's a very, very, very fine difference though, and I think that for most purposes, just shooting with the 10-bit XFAVC will suit most people, especially for corporate events, documentaries, anything that doesn't require a lot of color grading. Just shooting with our 10-bit XFAVC codec is just fine. RAW will, however, give you the ultimate quality, and I recommend it for when it really matters to you.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is the fact of what is your deliverable. Always keep that in mind. Is it just for on the phone, or is it going to be for theatrical release, big screens, and at the same time, just how much are you even going to push it? If you're not going to do major coloring, major shifting of the red to orange, then RAW it will be overkill for your workflow if you're not really pushing it to its limits.
Yeah,
it's also. If I could just add one more thing about shooting RAW versus shooting with a CP profile in a baked-in color space. With RAW, you could go to any color space. If you really want to be more flexible in your deliverables, you could go to Rec 709, you could go to PQ, HLG. You could do the same thing in XFAVC if you start off with Canon Log 2. From Canon Log 2, you could use LUTs to go to PQ, HLG, Rec 709. However, there's just more flexibility with the RAW in order to do that. And a lot of times when you're shooting XFAVC for video, you are choosing to shoot Rec 709. And if you shoot Rec 709, in that case, you cannot actually go to, you cannot in a good way go to other color spaces. You're really just locked into Rec 709. So that's a fine difference. Shooting Canon Log 2 in XFAVC and shooting Canon RAW and then going to Canon Log 2 are both great options for later choosing multiple deliverables.
Yeah, definitely, and I will add to that what Genaro says about it's up to the deliverable. It's up to the deliverable, and it is something really, really important. I remember one day people sent me some log. Actually, they record an interview and they record everything in log, and they need the interview for an hour after they record it. And they say, no, we cannot do it. The people don't like it. So they call me like to, in some way, make a color space transform. But in that time, we didn't make color space transform so much. So I was stretching leaf, gamma, gay, and so on. But the problem of that is that they didn't need the log. They needed a Rec 709 image for that purpose. So that's always to think about it. Think in your deliverable and think in your client and in your budget, definitely.
Absolutely. David, another questions for you. I'm sorry to bombard you with the questions, but I really would love to know. Could you explain a little bit what is the difference between the LUT workflow and the CDL workflow, if that rings any bell?
Oh, the CDL?
Yes.
As an ASC CDL?
ASC CDL, the color decisions list. Can both be combined into like one single workflow? If I'm using LUT in the pre-productions, should I also create a CDL for that, or?
You absolutely can use both workflows at the same time. For example, on set, you can load a LUT into the camera, and then with a third-party system, you can actually do power gain, offset adjustments, and save them into CDLs. So that is another option actually, and it's rather it's a more powerful option, but it's also more complicated, and I find that it's not very common. So it's actually a very good question. It's not something that I would actually expect from casual users. However, DITs on set who are working with CDL and ACES or not, or just a regular non-ACES workflow, do use CDLs with LUTs from out of the camera.
I see.
Yeah, and I will add, Max, to that part is, one of the problems of the LUT is that it cannot fit a look in all the shots. So with a LUT, we are creating a look LUT, but in order to fit one clip to that look LUT, in some of the cases, we use the CDLs to fit that clip into that look LUT. But as David said, in most of the cases happen when we are on set and when we are like shooting and we see no, definitely it's not like fitting. So we make an adjustment with lift gamma gain saturation to fit that shot into that LUT. So that's the main reason. And I would say it's a very common workflow. Most when you have a DIT and a person that is like creating that parts, and definitely it's like a safeguard for a LUT because the LUT will not fit in all the shots.
I see. I see. Thank you very much for the explanations, David and Diego. That really makes sense. Yeah. Is Tony still there? Tony, would you mind to walk through our setup today?
Yeah, I mean, as far as what we have here, let me see. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yes, we see you.
Okay, good. So anyway, besides the fact we have David and Hanero here, and I'm in this lovely space, let me just pop a
we're all
here.
right now actually at the Canon
We're
Burbank
literally
facility.
like right across from one another. So
yeah.
But what I would say is we have the two cinema cameras set up, the C70 and the C300, and you know I shot a few shots and I can supply them. Probably I'll give them to Max to send to everybody.
Yeah, we will upload the footage and the LUT after the webinar, guys. So there will be a downloadable link in the YouTube video later on.
And all it is you know, kind of with the cooking show theme here, like with a bunch of fruits, you know, stuff that's red, green, and as far as blue, I just have a Pepsi can, and no, we're not sponsored by Pepsi. So what I was going to say is, basically the idea is that, you know, I wanted to hand Max a file, and then Max can just basically take that red, turn that red to brown, turn that red to orange, you know, and then send it back to me. I could pop that in my camera, and you could do that, you know, via the internet and via whatever, and it's just literally a sidecar file. But what I would say a great takeaway from this would be when it comes to using anything with LUTs and with looks and any of that. You know, if you're looking at the C70, like David talked about before, you know, C70, that's a burned-in workflow. Unless you have, like we have here, let me see, I'll see if I can, actually here, I'll tell you what, I'll swap over. You should be able to see right here. Let me just, I'm going to jump over here and just show you when you're doing something like a C70. Can you see this? So here,
yep, we got
on here, you know, you get the infinite loop, right? So on here, you would use like an Atomos recorder or any other recorder available, the Blackmagic recorder, and you'd use that log, or I mean that LUT file that you can toggle on and off, and you'd loop through this, because burning in these things can be problematic. You can also like just basically offset the whole post situation. Always, like my opinion is to always shoot in log, get the most out of that sensor that you can. I mean, the sensors have, you know, a serious amount of dynamic range, so you want to maximize that. So the ideal situation would be if you're using the C70 camera, right? Do not burn it in. Just use an external recorder and then use that to toggle on and off. And you can even send, typically you can send one out to your client monitor, and then what you're seeing on your LCD or on another source, if you're doing an SDI or an HDMI, you know, then you can basically, you see what you want to expose for, and the client can see what looks more finished to them, and then you don't have to explain to them why does the sky look so washed out? Why do everybody look so washed out in your scene? So sidecar workflow.
Show me. Could you please show us, Tony, how do you load the LUT into the monitor?
So on the monitor, you'd use one of these, right? So just an SSD, and you can actually, a lot of these will allow for you to build your own little SSD. Just sort of, they give you little plastic carriages, and you can get a case of 5 of these, and then just put in whichever. Like I have a Samsung, I think, in this, and then you just load this into your, you know, if you have the caddy for the SSD. So you can buy like a USB-C to SSD. There's a few brands that make them. I know Atomos makes their own too. But just drop the file on there, and then when you slap it here in the back on this, then you can go and navigate through the menus, and it'll give you an option to toggle on that LUT. But you have so much more that you can play with inside of this recorder itself. I don't have any on this in particular, but you know, the idea is that you can pop in here and you can go to Avid Media, but let's see. If I can find it, that'd be the best part. So I typically, I never really work with LUTs as much. I usually like leave them up to whoever's setting up. Like here we go. So we have like.
While he's doing that one on the cameras, both the C300 Mark III and the C70, it's going through the SD cards on both, right, David? Also on the C300.
Yeah, and just kind of really make a differentiation between the two cameras, the C300 Mark III and then the C500 Mark II. You load a LUT into user slots, basically, which are just for monitoring. They're not actually, you can't bake in the look from a LUT. So they're monitoring so that you could shoot in CLOG 2 and CLOG 3, and then the LUT will take that image, and you know, you can then with the LUT see the image out of the SDR HDMI in Rec 709 or in HDR. But with the C70, the LUTs are used in a different way. They're used in what's called a look file, and when you load the same LUT in the C70, that actually is not used for a monitoring LUT, but it's actually modifies the recording. It's the LUT, the look gets burned in to the XFAVC or the HEVC codec that's going to be recording to your media in the C70.
And that's one of the two biggest. There's multiple differences between many differences, but one of them in the LUT one is how on the C70 is burned in, while on the C300 Mark III is just as a monitor reference.
I see. David, if you don't mind to answer another question, there's another question about HDR workflow from Aldo. In your experience, what color difference metric is best for HDR video? I'm not sure if what color difference metric is. Is it a color space or
a color difference metric, meaning the Adobe TP metric, or I'm not quite sure.
There's no further information about that in the question.
Color difference.
Oh, like delta E.
Delta E. Well, Adobe has the most advanced color difference metric, and that results in it's a much finer ability to achieve the delta E's. So it's Adobe's own proprietary color difference metric, which is the TPIP, I believe. I forgot the exact nomenclature for it. And that is the recommended color difference metric, and that's what Netflix uses as well. But there's always just the regular CIE 1931, color matching functions, and that's also still used for HDR as well as Rec 709.
I see. Yeah, it seems to answer the questions. Aldo say thanks for that. Tony, would you mind to walk us again, or was it David before? Could you show us again how do you load LUT into camera?
Yeah, I will try to show it to you. Unfortunately, the menus will not come across very clearly.
Webinar, they're backwards.
Yeah.
So, but we can talk through it. And
I can talk through it. Yes. So
we have the link for the C300 menu simulator, and we can share it here in the chat as well.
So I can just guide you through it verbally, because it's really just a matter of menu functions. Can you switch over to C7?
You know what? Do you want to come on over here? I'll share the screen. You can go to the menu simulator, and we'll share the screen from that. How's that?
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, that's good.
Do you have one for the C300?
Yeah, I have the C300.
Okay.
So just give us 1 second. David's going to come over here, and we're going to do it through the menu simulator, and I'm going to send the link. All right, so I'll send the link so everybody can kind of go through it if they want.
So Maxon, something for you guys. I'm going to head out early because I have to jump onto another webinar that got myself booked
on that
into.
note, thank you very much,
Yeah,
Genaro.
so
Thank you very much.
David, we'll lock it up for the rest of you guys. Again, thank you guys for joining us again today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
Genaro.
Ciao.
See ya.
Gracias. Ciao.
So let me share my screen a little bit. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we see it. So,
So,
we're on the, this is the Mark II simulator, David.
Okay.
So you know.
So for
Okay, so I'm gonna-
everyone want to try to load LUT into the Canon camera, you can use this link, which I've provided in the chat, and you can just follow the link and start the simulator.
And
So
then
back to
I'm
you,
gonna-
Tony.
I'll grab an apple box and see.
I'll
Yep,
switch off
I'm
my
gonna
screen
come on
share.
over here on move. So David's gonna run through this, and I'm gonna share. I'll share my screen here. And let me do. And okay, you see my screen?
No.
No.
Oh, great. All right, hold on 1 second. Okay, that's the fun part. All right, so let me go back to GoToWebinar. Okay, do you see my screen at all? Let's see.
No.
Well, I think you need to set me up for share.
Yeah, right, you're not.
Yeah, Max, can you set me up for a share and then I can?
Can make you a presenter.
Yes, sir. Okay.
You should be a
And
presenter now.
here it is. Now I can show. I'll share my screen. I'll share my clutter with everyone here.
Yes, we
And
can see
now-
that.
Now you see my menu, I mean the menu simulator here. Can you see this?
Yes, we see it.
Okay,
Good.
great. Now I'm gonna let the master do his work here. 'Cause I can do it, but not as great as David can.
Okay. Let's see if we can actually, I've actually never used this before, but let's go into, this is actually the Mark II.
Mark II, yes.
Yeah, I'll show that to you in the Mark II.
Okay. So basically, like things have shifted over, menu to menu based on model number, and then C70 has one menu system versus the C300.
Yeah, but-
So the C300. So where is it in the Mark III? It's in the.
It's in the LUT menus,
Okay.
or it's in the STI menus as well. However, it's a quite different menu structure
Mhm.
from the Mark.
So keep in mind, we were planning to show you this, but GoToWebinar, our setup here, we don't have. We're not able to do it without it being
it's,
cropped in and backwards.
Yeah.
This is actually the first time I'm using this simulator, and it's not fully functional, unfortunately.
Because they're probably ready for Mark III already.
So it's not.
So what I would say then, maybe if you want to talk it through, I'll switch you back.
Yeah, it's just better
wanna
if you
talk
talk
it
it
through,
through, and at least they get a piece of that menu, at least if they don't,
So,
even though they don't see the same thing.
If you want to hop back over there,
Uh-huh.
I'll
Okay.
So David's going to do it audibly versus showing it here on the screen. And let me just switch back here, and I'll stop my share.
One thing is that, as Hanara mentioned, it does start with just copying over the LUTs that you have, whether they're created, especially with Red Giant software or with
DaVinci Resolve.
Or with DaVinci Resolve. They have to be a dot cube, and they have to be a 33 grid cube file, not a 65. The cameras do not accept the 65 point grids. Okay, so once I have the .cube files loaded onto the SD card, which we have here, I just put it into the camera, and I just put it into the C300 Mark III, and then you'll see that it's a very flat image from the C300 Mark III, and we're going to change this over from CLOG 2 to Rec 709. The reason I did that was going back to the former point before, and I'm just going to move this Shogun out of the way so that you see the image more clearly. So now you see a much punchier image with saturated colors, which is that Rec 709 look, because it's now in the Rec 709 color space. The LUTs were created by Max and Diego in Rec 709 as the starting color space. So you have to be aware of that.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Because I did send log and 709. You definitely used the 709 version and not the log, Max and Diego?
Yeah, it was 709.
So this is an interesting question, and this is what I said, that is a conversation that that we actually do in real time. And for example, in my case, what I did was I make a color space transform from the CLOG to Rec 709, because in some cases, for example, what you guys do on set is that you load the LUT into a monitor that is expecting Rec 709 signal.
Yes.
So that's the reason that in this case we send a LUT in Rec 709, thinking that, for example, can be loaded in the Atmos or in the monitor. If definitely we could send it in an S-Log and print it there, but this is like a conversation that, okay, let's do this, come on, and based on that we will after like passing all the technical things, we will start creating what we wanted.
Okay.
That's right. And I think for post-production, once you bring the recording back to your station after you've used the LUT, you just have to remember to apply a CLOG 2 to Rec 709 transform LUT in one of your nodal or layers, nodal tree and layers, so that if you're trying to achieve that same look in post-production, you just got to remember, if someone else is working on it, that they have to apply that transform. So I'm just going to, you may not see the entire screen, but you just have to register the LUT, and here I'm doing it. There's already a LUT in 1 and 2. Oh, I register all 4 LUTs, so I'll just delete it.
So how many? That's actually a good point.
There's only 4. There's only 4 user slots for LUTs, user customized LUTs in the C300 Mark in 3, and that's something that I just had to actually delete one in order to load one for you. And here I'm just going to record what's called the colorist remap red to orange that either Diego or Max created.
And I can cut
and
to
then
that
I have to choose the color space, which is Rec 709, which would give you the option to use a base color space of Rec 709 or BT 2020, Rec 2020 as the color space, the base color space that the LUT is based on. So I'm going to choose Rec 709. And another really important point is to understand and have a dialogue as to what the scaling is, whether it's legal, narrow, or full range. And that's very important to really get the highlights and the blacks at the correct levels. So I already had the discussion with Max that the LUTs were created with doing in narrow range. So I'm going to choose that. Now I just, oops, sometimes it doesn't like it. So let's try it again. It may just not like for some reason it was created with a format that's not compatible. Now I'll do another LUT.
Try the ones that,
yeah.
So that one came from Colorista, and the other ones came from Resolve, so you can try that. Maybe that might be.
So one that was created called Warm Curve, it did accept. So that is the one thing to be aware of. You really should test that LUT out, because sometimes the format of the cube file can be incorrect. And now that I've actually loaded the LUT, I can I can actually use it. However, as you see,
So there's a quick question, sidebar question. You can load up to 4 on that
yes, you can load up to
C300 M2,
4.
and then can you toggle between all 4 like within a button or like a quick button? You know
Yeah, you can actually specify it in the.
So if you're exposing, you can quickly turn on that LUT, expose for that LUT, and then toggle that off.
Yes. You can choose. You can put them on and off as needed.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. David, that means like we are loading the LUT into the camera, right? Is there any benefit of using the LUT in the camera versus using the LUT in the monitor, for example, in the video village for previewing?
One, a lot of displays don't have the functionality of actually loading a 3D LUT. That's one big reason not to use to have the ability to, one big advantage of having the ability to have a LUT in the camera sending out of HDMI or SDI feed. Is there another advantage I'm trying to think of?
Well, does it? I know some cameras will keep the LUT inside of the file structure with the recorded files as a sidecar that can be referenced. Does it do that, or is it literally it lives in the OS of the?
Yeah, there's various initiatives to keep track of what LUT is being used as, in a sidecar file or in the XML file. However, the Canon cameras do not retain that information. You just have to know what LUT you were looking on.
I think an ideal situation, you would keep it and it goes all the way through post. So post already has your LUT that you're working with. So it's really a communication thing. Just like you said, when building the LUT, you need to know what the specs are ahead of time, like the 33 point versus what 60 or what is 66.
Yeah, and you also need to how do you call it? Take a note what the camera can take LUT wise, right? I think as David mentioned, if you are working with Canon, you should work in the 33 grid and .cube files.
Yes.
Am I correct? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Tony. I checked the time, and it seems like we are on the top of the hour. And before we wrap it up, I'm also would like to say I'm sorry that we have some technical difficulties that we cannot show the screen today. But yeah, we will be back next week, and we'll be talking more about more focus on Resolve, and we'll be discussing more about color management, and we will go how do you call it, step by step in setting up ACES in DaVinci Resolve. So
and at some point we can do a recording of the menu, actually do it through the menus and make a recording and maybe make that available if that helps.
Will that be available? Will that be possible as well? Because if that would be possible, that would be perfect. So we can just upload it into the uploaded video in the YouTube.
Yeah, I would say by next week's files we can submit that.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you very much.
Easy to do. Yep.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, everyone. Hope to see you next week. And we will spend some more time in Resolve next week. We'll focus on the ACES color management. And
awesome.
Until next week, I wish you a nice week. See ya.
Thank you.
Okay,
Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Awesome. Great. Bye.
Bye.